مواقعتها الإعلامية من بينهم الجزيرة الآن حتى القدس العربي لإثارة الفتن والقلاقل في الدول العربية. أذكر أعتقد منذ 4 سنوات فقط بالجزائر تم اغتيال 18 جندي يعني عسكري عمرهم يتراوح ما بين 18 و 22 سنة أعتقد لا أكثر في عز رمضان. ثم طلعت بعد 3 أيام قناة الجزيرة القطرية لأنها تابعة لقطر وتتبع أجندة حكومية قطرية باستفتاء آراء صبر آراء على الجزيرة نت يسأل الناس ما رأيكم في العمليات القتالية أو عمليات المقاومة بالجزائر، وبعدين النتيجة كانت أكثر من 70% يؤيدون هل هذا يعني أطرح سؤال، هل هذا ليس بنشر للفكر الإرهابي والمتطرف وتشجيع حتى الشباب للقيام بعمليات إرهابية وانتحارية في الجزائر وفي غيرها؟ يعني هذه نقطة مهمة جدا. أشكرك الأخ إياد على المداخلة. أترك المجال للأخت كارلا، عزيزتي كارلا، مشان تتدخل إن شاء الله. شكرا.
شكرا. Thank you very much, friends and colleagues. My colleagues spoke about specific country focus, while I will speak about, in general, about the relationship between terrorism and human rights, and also about the effect of terrorism on the concept of living together in the Middle East. I want first to thank the Arab Federation for Human Rights for this initiative. The relationship between terrorism and human rights is a complex one, although I am aware that in this session we are speaking about how terrorism has an impact on human rights. We should not forget and mention and acknowledge how human rights and violation of human rights has an impact and encourages and triggers the establishment of terrorist groups in any states and by any government. As long as we continue to ignore the root causes, social, economic, and political, and not only religious, that lead to the establishment of groups such as Al-Qaeda or ISIS, we will remain in a tragic circle. Names will change, methods may change, but the overall image, the fear, and the emotions, unfortunately, will remain through the generations. Going back to our topic, terrorism has a real and direct impact on human rights. It violates the rights of people to life, liberty, and security. Terrorism destabilizes governments, undermines civil society, jeopardizes peace and security, and threatens economic and social development. We witnessed shocking abuses of human rights, violations of international humanitarian law, and other criminal acts by non-state actors such as Daesh, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, all of which are considered terrorist groups. The range of abuses included genocide and crimes against humanity directed against religious minorities, for example, in Syria and Iraq, although we accept that these crimes were perpetrated not only against religious minorities, but also sometimes against Muslims themselves. These groups flourish in the absence of credible and effective state institutions, specifically when big void and vacuum are created, like it happened in Iraq after the occupation of Iraq or the invasion of Iraq in 2003 by the United States of America. If we take the example of Iraq, sectarian violence fueled by the actions of Daesh, also known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, continued to divide the country. Destabilizing violence occurred throughout the year as government forces fought to liberate territory lost to Daesh, principally in Arab Sunni and some mixed ethno-sectarian areas, like in the north of the country and the Nineveh Plain, where most of the minority ethnic groups are situated. Armed clashes between Daesh and the government forces caused civilian hardship. By the year's end, in 2016, the number of internally displaced persons had surpassed 3.2 million. The country also hosted 245,000 Syrian refugees, most of whom have settled in the Iraqi Kurdistan region. Although donor funding increased, government response fell short of rapidly rising humanitarian demands, and displaced populations become destituted, leading some citizens to seek refuge abroad. Severe human rights problems were widespread. Daesh committed the overwhelming number of serious human rights abuses, including attacks against civilians, especially Shia, but also Sunnis, who opposed Daesh. So mainly these terrorist groups attacked any group that were against their ideology. Members of other religious and ethnic minorities, especially women and children, were the main victims of these groups. The crimes were torture, kidnapping, extortion of civilians, etc. Crimes against Yazidi women, we all saw the examples that were on the media. Terrorists committed the overwhelming number of serious human rights abuses. Daesh members committed acts of violence on a mass scale, including killing by suicide bombing, improvised explosive devices, execution-style shootings, public beheadings, and other forms of execution. They also engaged in kidnapping, rape, enslavement, forced marriages, sexual violence, committing such acts against civilians from a wide variety of religious and ethnic backgrounds, including Shia, Sunni, Kurds, Christians, Yazidis, and members of other religious and ethnic groups, as well as religious pilgrims. So these terrorism also affected on living together. As a result of these terrorist acts, the religious minorities have left the Middle East region. In Iraq today, only 250,000 Christians remained out of 1.2 million in 2003. And when we speak today about returning of these people, there is no big hope because the trust issue was created among these people. Yazidi community and women, the issue is the same. I think 450,000 Yazidi only remain today in the north of the country, while these are indigenous people of the land, so historically they were there from the beginning of the time. It's the same for the Christians. Christians are ethnically the indigenous people of this region. So the social fabric of these countries are changing. In Syria today also, I think only 20 or 30% only of the Christian population remain in the country. So not only terrorism violated human rights, they also violated, if we can use the word, the cohesion, the social cohesion, the social pact of these countries, the historic civilization of these countries. The conditions today to rebuild a real social pact of this region are firstly international court to establish justice, secondly communal reconciliation, and thirdly building infrastructure, which I don't think can happen soon. How can we stop these facts? Firstly, by stop of financing terrorism, and of course by the international sanctions like we see today happening towards Qatar. However, we need to see also a political will to continue on this track. Secondly, by stopping and responding to the ideological challenge of terrorism. Counterterrorism and human rights. We are speaking about terrorism and human rights, but